Hello and welcome. My name is Carol Carter, and I'm the founder and the CEO of GlobalMindED. We are all about creating a capable, diverse talent pipeline to get more women, people of color, ability status, first gen to college, LGBTQ, any way you can define diversity into the education, employment, economic mobility, and leadership pipeline. We started about 6 years ago, and we have an annual event every year, which this year it's virtual, and this session today is one of those virtual events. This whole week, we're calling our main stage sessions. They're for our sponsors and our key partners. And we achieve our work in a number of different ways. One is through the conference every year. Two is through our GlobalMindED collaboratives at 15 different historically Black colleges, Hispanic serving institutions, and minority serving institutions around the country. A third way is through our Inclusive Leader Awards. And those awards go to people across 14 different sectors who are doing the most to open the doors for women, people of color, and underrepresented populations. And finally, we have a young professionals leaders group, and we also have a leadership team for first generation to college. So we just had that program for them last Friday and Saturday. So welcome today. We're delighted that you joined us for this very important topic. And the theme for this year's event is called The Future of Work is Diverse and Inclusive. And we amended that about a week ago to say the future of work is diverse, inclusive, just, and equitable. And this session today is about how it belongs to young change makers. So it's my pleasure to welcome Stéphane Lessard. Stephane joined the Global Affairs Canada at the Consulate General of Canada in August of 2016. As Canada's Consul General in Denver, Stephane oversees a team of 17 people who work within Colorado, Kansas, Montana, Utah, and Wyoming to strengthen trade and economic ties, enhance political, academic, and cultural links, and assist Canadians visiting or living in the 5-state U.S. mountain region. Stephane began his career practicing commercial law in Montreal before joining the Canadian federal government in 1993, where he has held numerous senior and executive positions. Prior to arriving in Denver, Stephane spent the last 10 years with Health Canada, where he served in a different executive position across the offices of the Chief Scientist, the Strategic Policy Branch, the Healthy Environments and Consumer Safety Branch, and the Pest Management Regulatory Agency. He also worked with the Canadian Space Agency, where, as the head of international affairs, he oversaw relationships with foreign, national, and multinational space agencies and with the Global Affairs Canada Global Partnership Program, where he focused on preventing the spread of weapons of mass destruction. Stephane is definitely a global-minded citizen. He is all about gender equity. He holds a BCI from the University of Montreal, his LLM in Air and Space Law from McGill University, his LLB from University of Ottawa, and an MBA from the University of Western Ontario. He's a native of Montreal, Canada, and together with his wife, Raj Bansal, have 3 children. And we've had the pleasure to meet Jasmine, Lena, and Benjamin. So please join me in welcoming Stéphane Lessard and our wonderful panel today.
Well, thank you so much, Carol. It's a pleasure to be with you all. Bienvenue à vous tous et vous tous. Welcome to all of you. It's a treat to be with you all today, and you know, a few thoughts that I would share before we get going with the panel of our young change leaders today. I would share a few thoughts first. As we gather virtually, we'd all like to be in person, but as we gather virtually today, I think we're all conscious that we do so at an important moment. A moment when many world leaders are rethinking the international rules-based system that has ensured peace and prosperity since the Second World War. Also a moment when a global pandemic has threatened so many, perhaps even our friends and family. and created economic hardships for many, many more. A time when many of our fellow citizens are angry about the accumulated weight of injustices and humiliations, big and small, done to them, often by civil authorities, simply because they were living their human life in their human skin. This is true in the US, it's true in other countries as well, and it's certainly true in Canada. We too in Canada grieve for our loved ones who have fallen victim to the COVID-19 virus. Too often, in fact, are elderly citizens who live in long-term care homes. In the past few days, our citizens as well, young and old, have marched in the streets to demand equal justice and equal respect. It's true that in Canada, Canadians, we value diversity and consider it a strength, and we aspire to ensure respect for everyone and equal justice for everyone. However, as Prime Minister Trudeau has said, we can't pretend in Canada that racism doesn't exist in our country. Anti-Black racism is real, anti-Indigenous racism is real, so is unconscious bias, and so is systemic discrimination. They're all real. Our Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau, has called the status quo unacceptable, and he committed the federal government to take more meaningful action in the fight against racism and discrimination in every form. As he said, it's past time for change. So as neighbors, as friends and allies for centuries, our two countries, Canada and the US, we face this moment together in solidarity and with hope. And as we feel the need to leave aspects of the past behind because they don't live up to our aspirations, the question then becomes, what next? What's next to create a fairer world for all, where everyone is safe, has an equal shot at a good health, a good paying job, to live the life that makes them happy? A world where each person, no matter whom they love or the color of their skin, is respected, valued, and is a full partner in our society. Personally, I don't believe in easy solutions. The world is just too complex, and the problems we face, including global ones like dealing with climate change or ensuring sustainable development, are very daunting. Rather than look for simple formulas, I think now is the time to do the hard work needed to really listen to each other, to learn from one another, and to figure this out together. Now is the time to talk about what works in our world, because there is a lot to celebrate in our world, but also to be honest about what doesn't work anymore, and to be open-minded about finding new lasting solutions together. And as we do this, we can't be in our echo chambers. If that ever worked, and I'm not sure it did, it can't work anymore. If this moment has taught us anything, it's that we need to break down these barriers. These are the principles that guide Canada's engagement in the world. The idea that people from different backgrounds can come together to build something greater than ourselves. That's why Canada is currently seeking a seat on the United Nations Security Council to work with the US and other countries to sustain peace, address climate change, advance gender equality, promote economic security for everyone, and strengthen multilateralism. My friends, we cannot tackle these daunting challenges as we always have and expect different outcomes. We need to work together, but differently. We need to be inclusive and consider all voices, extending well beyond voices of people who look like me and are in my age group, to reach young people of diverse backgrounds with new ideas, because frankly, the burden and opportunity to build a better world in many ways falls on their shoulders. Let's listen to the young people and let's be their partners for change. So with great confidence that the future is in good hands, and with special thanks to our partner GlobalMindED, our partner for change, to Carol Carter specifically and her team, I present to you my fellow Canadians Riya Karumanchi and Shaan Baig, as well as Ms. Summer Benjamin from right here in the US in Northern California for this panel of young changemakers. Thank you very much. Merci.
I think I'm muted, but thank you so much for the warm introduction, Stephane. So first off, again, a huge thank you to the Consulate General of Canada, GlobalMindED, and the amazing team that was involved in putting this event together. So hi everyone, my name is Riya Karumanchi, and I'm a 17-year-old entrepreneur and innovator and founder of a company called SmartCane. And we're basically building an assistive device for orientation and mobility for the visually impaired. And I'm also working on an initiative to help pregnant women during the COVID-19 pandemic to give them essentials during all this crazy stuff happening around the world. So growing up, I was super interested in technology and found an interest for machine learning in particular, and got really interested about how we can actually leverage these as tools to solve a lot of important social problems around the world, and for me, particularly in healthcare. So I'm so excited and honored to be moderating this panel today with Summer Benjamin and Shaan Baig. They're incredible innovators, and they've inspired me so much with the amazing projects and initiatives they've launched. And I'm really excited for them to share a little bit more about them with you. So as you all know, we're living in unprecedented times right now in light of a global pandemic, and with millions uniting to come together to fight against the racial injustice that has been occurring throughout history and the present as well. So first off, my hearts and prayers go out to all of the victims and all of the innocent lives lost in this last year. And I hope that meaningful change happens, because reform is long past due. So this is the time where we actually need to all come together with our unique skills and experiences to help strategize ways to move forward and build the world that we want to live in today. And this is a world where everyone is equal, a world where there is justice, a world where everybody is safe, where each and every individual has equal access to basic human needs like education, healthcare, and shelter. And I think that every single person in the audience today has the power to actually spearhead this change. We can already see the abundance of progress happening around the world with little things. And this is because a lot of people are uniting, they're coming together, and they're using their voices and opinions to speak for what is right and pave the better future for humanity. So I'd like this conversation to explore how we can actually use our positions to contribute to positive change and have an impact on these pressing global problems. So while also navigating how to deal with everything that's going on around the world. So I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today for this really important virtual conversation. And you'll hear from some brilliant young leaders who will speak about how more youth can actually start learning about science and technology and leverage them as tools to help spearhead global change through solving meaningful problems affecting a vast array of communities and groups worldwide. So to start off, I'm going to share a little bit about my journey as an entrepreneur and how I developed a passion for technology, and I'm using it to bring innovation in the healthcare sector and accessibility. So I'm just going to share my screen. You can see it. Let me know. And so first off, to start off, I'd like to welcome you all to the next 100 years of your lives and a look into a bit of the 17 years of mine. So right now, in terms of human history, we're here. But actually, what if I told you that we were in one of the most interesting and exciting times in history? Right now, we're actually just at the beginning. So I want all of you to imagine taking a time machine back to 1750, a time when the world was in a permanent power outage. You got from place to place on horses, and long distance communication really just meant yelling super loudly. But if we take a look back, the 21st century is exponentially different from that of the 17th and 19th centuries, to the point where the amount of progress that's happened is absolutely unfathomable. And this is only going to continue to grow. The world is going to advance at an exponential rate, and we're right at the inflection point. Now, the main driver for a lot of this change that's happening boils down to one key thing, and I believe that that's technology. And what I'm about to describe to you may seem like science fiction, but it's actually a very exciting reality. So when we take a look at the world we're living in today, things have changed immensely. We've reached a whole new level of connectivity, convenience, and knowledge, with so many things being available right at our fingertips. But within decades, or even less, emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and quantum computing can cause disruption on a scale that'll make smartphones and the internet just look like gentle ripples on an ocean of history. So growing up, I was a super curious person. I always asked a lot of questions, to the point where my family actually nicknamed me the Question Baig. So I really wanted to understand more about the world and how it worked, and I really didn't believe in some of the current systems or products that I've seen. So at one point in my life, my bar for these questions hit a spike. And this is actually when I visited India to see my grandmother in the 4th grade. So my mom and my grandmother, they're actually from a village in southern India, and I usually go there about every other year to see them. So in the 4th grade, as the summer was approaching its end, I made a friend named Krishna, and she'd come over to our house every single day, and I'd play with her. So it was one day when we were playing a traditional Indian board game called Carom Board. I actually had asked her what grade she was going into, and the answer that she gave me was shocking. And I think it definitely changed my view about how the world worked, and that a lot of things actually weren't right. And she told me that she actually had to drop out of school because she needed to support her family because her father had passed away. And she was working as a maid every single day to get by and support her family financially. Now, for me, I was born in Canada, and I just realized the amount of gratitude I had for the amazing opportunities that came to me. I literally won the birth lottery by being born here, and that's when it hit me that millions of other people just like her didn't have everything that I had access to. And I was mad. I thought it was unfair that so many people had to live like that. And that's when I realized that there are a lot of groups being left behind. So a lot of questions started popping up into my head, and more, until I realized that I think we're at a moment in our life where we actually have to start using our privilege to drive meaningful change around the world. There are a lot of groups and communities that are often overlooked. And as I grew older, in about the 9th grade, I realized that one of these communities was actually the accessibility community. So when I was at my friend's house one day, I had a chance encounter with her visually impaired grandmother. And she was bumping into a lot of things when trying to get around the house, and I had a moment to sit down and talk to her. And she was telling me about a device that she used called the white cane, which had actually been just a stick that was never updated to take advantage of new technologies. And the stick could actually only detect obstacles on the ground and nothing above the ground from knee to head level. And the craziest part was it literally hasn't been updated in 100 years. And for me, a person that got really interested in technology and coding and circuitry in about grade 7 when I joined a program called Zero to Startup, I thought it was really great, and I thought we could actually leverage these as tools to solve important problems like these. So it kind of inspired me to do a little brainstorming, come up with different ideas, and that's kind of where SmartCane was born. So something that started out as a science fair project actually evolved into a startup company. So we were building an enhanced version of the white cane with object detection capabilities, GPS navigation, and computer vision to describe a person's surroundings. And that's kind of at the moment when I realized what I'm actually passionate about. And I believe that it's really healthcare innovation and making sure that every single person around the world, regardless of where you're from, should have access to the same quality of healthcare that we have in Canada and the United States. And I believe that is a human right. So along this journey, it was so much crazier than I would ever have expected. We raised about $83,000 in funding and in-kind services from a lot of great companies like you see here, and developed a team to make a prototype and eventually do a pilot. And last summer, I actually had the privilege to also work at Deloitte, where we built an assistive device to help seniors to help with fall predictions. So we created a fall prediction wearable that used machine learning to predict when an older adult would encounter a fall, and it would actually notify them and provide them with rehabilitation exercises that they could do. And Deloitte is looking to scale this across long-term care homes in Canada. So that is a little bit about me and some of the work that I've done, but I certainly don't think that it was my IQ or anything like that. I really believe that if you really want to scale something and start a meaningful company, it's about your willingness to put in the work, fail, take risks, and learn from your failures that'll help you succeed. And learning how to learn is such an important skill that's so valuable along this journey. I don't think you ever stop learning after, whether it's high school or university. It's really a lifelong journey. But something that I was thinking about was, how can we actually drive more of this change around the world? So the only way that we're actually going to make meaningful progress in some of the most challenging problems of our time is for more smart people to drive the solutions. So a common misconception when it comes to social innovation is that you can either get a return on investment or a return on humanity. But I actually believe that you can get both, because there are a lot of problems around the world that do have a huge economic incentive tied to it. But in order to figure out what they are, we need to go beyond the communities that we live in, because it's so important to acknowledge that we do live in a bubble right now. There are so many issues happening globally in a lot of different countries that we commonly aren't aware about. So going to travel, even talking to people around you, every single person has a unique story to share. Taking a moment to get to know them and hear about it is so important to help broaden your perspectives about the world as well. There are a lot of issues like cost of living, the food crisis. We won't have enough food to sustain a global population of 9 billion by literally 2030. Access to healthcare around the world, and also access to quality education. And I know while these may seem daunting, I'd like to emphasize that every single problem is just an opportunity in disguise. So embracing that mindset when you're approaching different things in life is going to be so valuable. And also acknowledging that you have the power to solve a lot of these, whether it's in a big or small way, because it does go a long way in the end. So when we take a look at the next 100 years, things are going to change exponentially. So an important thing to keep in mind is, how can we actually change our mindset from being reactive to proactive instead? And I think that's so important, especially when it comes to innovation in the technology space. So artificial intelligence is changing the world at a breakneck speed, as you all know. And I got interested in this about a couple years ago when I joined a program called the Knowledge Society that exposed me to something completely new. When I first thought of technology, I think of things like my phone or the internet, but when I found out that there was so much more than that, I was actually really surprised, because it was a whole new array of tools that we could use to help solve those problems that I was just talking about. So when I came to building things in this space, it brought me back to the thought again about how many groups were being left behind. And one of the big problems I saw through traveling to places like South Africa and India was the very limited access to quality healthcare and doctors in rural regions and villages. So I thought that computer vision in particular had a really interesting aspect to how we can actually use it to help with diagnosis for various types of cancer using artificial intelligence. So as part of a project, I did build an algorithm to classify malignant and benign tumors from breast cancer scans using an online database from the Cancer Imaging Archive. And that's just one of the applications for artificial intelligence. So I highly suggest a lot of you to look more into it. But this all started when doing an online course in differentiating between a cat and a dog. And also, when we think about the smartest minds in history, we often think about people like Albert Einstein or Sir Isaac Newton. But when we actually think about this, the human brain hasn't developed in hundreds of years. And I think that's crazy. So a technology that also really excites me is about brain-computer interfaces. So what if we can actually find a way to bring our brains to the 21st century? And we can actually leverage the electrical activity in our brain to literally control machinery and computer programs with our mind. And I think that's amazing. And it brings us to think about the incredible potential of technologies like these, whether it is to create maybe an artificial general intelligence or a robot. But I think something also interesting is using this to help with artificial limbs and prosthetic limbs for a lot of disabled individuals around the world. And a lot of this does seem like some sort of science fiction, but stuff like this is actually happening today. And the last thing that I do want to talk about is genomics. All of this pales in comparison to what's to come, and that's the ability to control our own biology. So with genomics, we can actually leverage it to eradicate a lot of diseases around the world, enhance human capabilities to an unimaginable level, and even create designer babies. So another thing, lastly, the technology that I do want to talk about is the aspect of human longevity. So it's an incredibly exciting landscape. And I want you to imagine living like you're 22 until you're 80 or 90, or even extending not just your health spans, but your lifespans as well. And I think with this, we can actually figure out ways to produce more children or reduce senescent cells in our body to help us achieve this goal. So a lot of things like these, and why I kind of describe these to you, is there's a lot of stuff happening around the world that we normally aren't aware of. But I don't think that all of these different technologies are entities on their own, but they're kind of tools in our toolbox that we develop for ourselves to help solve these really meaningful social problems globally. But at the end of the day, the future is just a vision, and it's up to us to start building it. And I really want to thank you all for having me today, and I think you're going to be even more inspired by hearing the incredible stories of Shaan and Summer and all the amazing work that they've done. And if I had to leave you all with a bit of key takeaways, I think the first thing would be to take risks. I don't think you're ever too young or too old to act on an idea you have. It's just your willingness, like I said, to put in the work, learn, and get advice and learn from your failures. And I'd suggest if you have an idea, go for it and start building it. And the last thing is that in order to achieve unconventional success, you need to take an unconventional path. And that's a piece of advice that one of my mentors gave me growing up. And I wanted to share that with you. So without further ado, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and I can't wait to get to our panel. So you'll find yourself blown away by our two panelists today, Shaan Baig and Summer Benjamin. So Shaan is a 19-year-old student at Concordia University. He's an American-Canadian student researcher, entrepreneur, and speaker. Shaan is the founder of SB Innovations, a research and development company focused on creating novel solutions for the world's most pressing issues. So what simply started out as science fair projects led Shaan to selecting an urgent global issue each year to develop a low-cost, sustainable solution for it. So this includes his novel work on Alzheimer's disease, early detection and treatment, his innovations of the anti-concussion helmet, a cancer sensor strip, an alternative prostate cancer treatment, and more. He has worked with top institutes such as McGill University, Harvard University, Montreal Neurological Institute, Bauer, McGill University Health Center, and more. For his work, he's been named a 2020 Global Teen Leader by the WAFF. And Summer Benjamin is a 16-year-old ocean advocate, climate activist, avid diver, and sailor with dual citizenship, so she's Antiguan and American, and she's also a glider pilot and has received numerous scholarships and accolades. Last year, she has co-founded an environmental club called the Earth Warriors. Along with her friends, she initiated the Eco Eaters, a project to reduce single-use plastic at local restaurants, and presented the project at the POP Festival in Nuevo Vallarta last summer, and since then has presented and emceed at several global conferences around the world. So throughout the discussion, we're gonna have a Q&A session at the end, so I encourage you all to write down any questions that you have. I wanna make this as engaging as possible. So make sure to write them down, and we'll definitely get to them towards the end of the conversation. So without further ado, let's get to it. So I do have, my first question is for Summer. So you've obviously had a huge impact on ocean sustainability with all of the incredible initiatives you've been a part of and have started. So what kind of got you first interested in ocean water sustainability?
Thank you, Rhea. And by the way, your journey is so incredibly inspiring. I have always really loved the ocean. My dad is a boat captain, and my mom has always been involved in marine conservation or one way or another. So I truly feel part of the ocean. As you said, I'm a diver and sailor myself. Since getting my basic open water scuba certification in Maui 5 years ago, I've been diving all over the Caribbean, in the Philippines, and my favorite, which is the Rainbow Reef in Fiji. Last year, I also sailed from Fort Lauderdale to the Virgin Islands. So after witnessing the beauty of life below water firsthand, I had no chance but to fight for the protection of our oceans. This being said, I got the chance to learn about climate change in school early on, and I knew that I had to take on the responsibility to care for my environment.
That's amazing, and that's an amazing story. And how old are you again, Summer?
I'm 16.
Her Summer's journey is absolutely incredible, and I can't wait to talk a little bit more about some of the projects that you've worked on. So, Shaan, could you actually touch on some of the projects that you've worked on and science fairs and things that you've built?
Yeah, totally. So I remember visiting the local science fair in grade 5 and being super inspired by like all these new technologies being developed by people my age, and so that really inspired me to do the projects for the past 8 years. So at first it started off like really hockey related because I love hockey. We love hockey up here in Canada, and I received a concussion actually, and so I wanted to design this hockey helmet that kind of replicated the anatomy of the brain, that actually absorbed more force than the designs of the helmets that were on the market at the time. And so that was kind of like my first real breakthrough, I guess, in a science or project. Then I went on to do more medical related projects. I discovered a alternative treatment for prostate cancer that was never tested before. And I saw that not only did it work, but it worked better than the standard chemotherapy drug. I ended up designing this diagnostic chip for bladder cancer actually, and seeing how just by a urine sample, kind of like a pregnancy test, if a person will ever get the disease, and if so, at what age they'll develop the first stage. And then I really got interested in Alzheimer's disease after my grandfather was diagnosed with vascular dementia. I designed this molecular probe for the early diagnosis and treatment of Alzheimer's disease that can essentially detect the disease at birth and see, you know, if they're ever going to get the disease in their lifetime. So those were some of the projects that I was working on.
Partially cured Alzheimer's. And you're 19, Shaan?
Yeah.
So as you can see, I think the future is in good hands, in very good hands, and it's definitely very, very bright. So Summer, could you actually speak to your project called Eco-Eaters? What inspired you to start it? And feel free to expand as much as you want.
Yeah, sure. So Eco-Eaters is a project, as you said earlier, that helps restaurants in my community reduce their single-use plastic usage. So I started this project because I wanted to make a difference that started with my own community. So I live in Tahoe City, which is a small little tourist town. So the restaurants get most of their money during the ski season and during the summer. And I knew that most of the tourists come from the San Francisco Bay Area, and they're used to restaurants taking a more sustainable approach. So they will be inclined when they come to Tahoe to go to more restaurants that are doing the same. So we're working with restaurants to make a plan to use less plastic. We try to make achievable goals for specific plastic items that they'll be replacing over time. And we check in with the restaurants as often as we can to make sure they're actually improving. So we have been able to turn a few restaurants from using styrofoam takeout boxes, plastic bags, plastic utensils, to going completely sustainable and using cardboard materials or biodegradable materials. So that's what the Eco-Eaters project is.
That's amazing. And can you describe some of your work at POP as well, and some of the events that you helped organize and your experience so far in ocean sustainability?
Yeah, so we at POP is an organization that really just strives to help empower youth and their projects and ideas that they have to make the world more sustainable. So I was at the very first youth pop conference, that happened last August in Nuevo Vallarta. And before I went to that conference, that was my very first time speaking in front of a large group of people. So I was very nervous, but the people there are so incredibly inspiring, and they're all youth, and you can all relate to each other and hear about everyone's different projects that they're working on, whether it's helping restaurants be more sustainable, or going on trash cleanups. However big or small the project is, coming together at POP can help us, or has helped me, meet more people and grow my project and organization and grow my experience as well. And so the second event that I went to with POP was called the World Sustainable Development Forum. And I actually emceed that conference, which was my first time emceeing anything again. And I got to meet incredible dignitaries around the world and former politicians who are making a real difference. And so POP has helped me connect with not only other youth, but politicians and dignitaries who I can work with to create a better future.
The impact that you've had so far is amazing, and I can't wait to see all the great things that you'll continue to do. And so my next question is for the both of you. So as you both know, we're living in the midst of a global pandemic, and millions of people are uniting to ask for reform for the hundreds of years of racial injustice against the African American community. And I think these are just some of the myriad of pressing problems occurring around the world simultaneously. So as leaders, both of you, how do you find you deal with these in these unprecedented and chaotic times when you're working on all of the amazing things that you're doing?
Yeah, I think that when something bothers me, at least I can't just sit back and do nothing. And I think that's very evident with a lot of people our age, where you're seeing everyone at home and there's things brewing up in this world that are bothering people. And now with all this free time, people are getting involved, showing what they care about, and actually making change from nothing, from what they're inspired about. And I think that is evident in kind of the work that I was doing. I remember back in February when, COVID-19 was really making its way to North America. Personally, me and some of my colleagues and friends, we worked on building a ventilator from scratch, because ventilators were expected to have a sudden decrease and a major use around the world. And so we designed this low-cost, simple to use ventilator from scratch, under $100 to make. And that was kind of the work we were doing. We're also the not-for-profit I started. We were 3D printing face shields for hospitals around Quebec, and able to work with and get people on board, such as like Bauer and Nike, and getting other people to really start mass producing these face shields up here in Canada. And so I think it's very evident when problems are brewing, and our generation has a lot of free time. No one can just sit still, and I'm very impressed by that.
That's great. The work that both of you are doing during this pandemic and with everything that's going on, and moving forward to actually take action instead of sitting back, that's definitely very inspiring. What about you, Summer?
Yeah, this is a really great question. We are truly living in such unprecedented times, and the world is changing quickly. And my approach is to also continue to focus on the areas that I've committed to, while at the same time trying to make action and make people more aware of the issues going on at the moment. Not only just being active on social media, but actually taking the time. I think it's really important to now take this time to learn more about civil rights movements in general, and learn more about how you can help the people that are going through these big changes and that are experiencing this, so that everyone can be educated to make their own choices and own decisions, so that we can make a difference. And so I think it's also important to take a step back from all these issues and take some time for yourself to do the things that you love so you can put this all in perspective and be able to make real change.
Yeah, both of those were perfectly said. I think educating yourself on everything that's going on is so important. And I think a big part of it is a lot of us will be able to understand, but standing with everybody in these times is going to be so, so important. And Summer, I was wondering, like, actually for both of you, how can more young leaders get involved and start working to push a lot of these barriers and tackle problems in healthcare and the environment, and also justice to help push this better future for humanity? Both of you have worked on incredible projects, and I'm sure some of the people watching would also kind of have similar mindsets and want to help contribute towards this change. So is there any kind of words of advice that you have for some of the people watching, old or young?
Well, I think youth truly have more power than they realize. And right now we are able to connect in so many different ways. I mean, we're only able to connect virtually now, but through different social media like Instagram and Twitter and virtual events. So the best way to make an impact, in my opinion, is to connect with other like-minded people who have similar goals and want to learn about similar things of all ages, really. And I encourage everyone to take the time to look for groups and organizations that stand for what you believe in and reach out to see how you can get involved and just connect with people so that you can learn and grow your projects, or if you have any ideas, just talk to people. I think that's what's most important.
Are there like any platforms that you'd suggest for how a lot of young people can go ahead and try to meet people, beyond their communities and high schools, to maybe more on a global lens?
Yeah, well, I know there are an infinite amount of youth groups focusing on various different topics. So I would say just like on social media, look up the groups, and I would say just go for it and just reach out to someone directly, like like through their DMs, and just talk to someone, try to start a conversation so that, because I think there'll be more people. We're all dealing with similar issues, and you might find someone who's really common to you and wants to have a conversation and wants to just talk. And I think, yeah, that's my answer.
That's great. And what about you, Shaan?
Yeah, I think what Summer said about kind of getting connected with people with similar interests, I think that's the most important. If you're informed and kind of moved by an issue and you are connected with other like-minded people, I feel like that's the most important. An example of this, the International Science and Engineering Fair is comprised of students all around the world. And I remember when COVID first made its way to North America, our group chat was alive and well, and this kind of Discord server was made of just all these science fair participants from around the world trying to develop different technologies just to solve this problem. And who would have thought like all these teenagers would ultimately design drugs for COVID and all these things. And I think having a network of people that you can kind of fall to or, create change with is the most important. And if you don't have that, there's Facebook groups, there's not-for-profit organizations, there's labs. You can go online and Google labs who maybe need volunteers or people to read articles and inform them with stuff. There's a lot of things you can possibly do, but the most important to make change, I would say, is definitely get involved and find a like-minded group of people.
Yeah, that's super valuable advice. I couldn't agree more. So for all of you watching, know you should probably do maybe after this panel and start exploring different things about how you can get involved. And Summer, my next question is for you. So out of all the amazing things that you've done, was there somebody that inspired you along the way, somebody that was your role model that kind of pushed you to work on things like this or kind of moved you in some way?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many role models. One significant one is Dr. Ash Paturi. Dr. Ash runs the POP movement, and he empowers so many youth like myself around the world. Ash inspires me by the way he interacts with everyone, really. He listens to the projects and ideas of the youth just as he would any scientist or politician. he has been able to connect not only the youth to each other, but the youth to politicians and dignitaries so that we can work together to create a better future for everyone. I've seen Ash meet with world leaders and then get on the dance floor with young people a few hours later. He really knows how to meet people where they're at, and he's super inspiring, not only with just like environmental action, but just the way that he treats people and how he gets messages across from youth to politicians and dignitaries. So that's my—
And Summer, I'm just going to interject and say that he was on a panel we launched 8 weeks ago for the virtual Global Minded, and he was on one of our Earth Week sessions, and that's how we met. And then he reached out to me, and this is how we got to you, and that's how you got involved today. So he's fabulous, and we're very excited to collaborate with POP and meet folks like you. So thank you for that.
He is a truly amazing ally to youth. Yeah, he'll connect us with anyone, whether he's just met them or he's known them his entire life. He's just truly inspiring.
He sounds amazing. I would love to meet him someday. Thanks so much for sharing that. And Shaan, for you, so you've worked on so many amazing projects, found an early treatment for the detection of Alzheimer's, and for your work in prostate cancer, and even all of the projects that you've worked on in COVID. So as a teenager, certainly developing technologies like this is no easy feat. So I was wondering, how did you actually go about learning about a lot of these complex concepts and give yourself a foundational knowledge that was enough to actually drive some innovation in this space?
Yeah, I think that one of the most important things, obviously you don't learn these things in school or high school or elementary school. And these are all the kind of the projects I was working on are kind of like PhD level research. And I think the most important thing is to kind of read and understand these complex ideas and be able to kind of explain it to anyone, no matter if they're in elementary school or, a lead researcher at Harvard. I think the most important is really break down these complex ideas that really anyone can, if you just know basic skills of how to break down kind of complex sentences that you'd find in research papers. I remember when I first started, reading a published journal, I'd have to kind of look up 5 words in the dictionary each sentence. And I think that if you can do that, you can honestly understand any problem. And a perfect example would be my last research project, which would be, I explained it to kind of toddlers saying you can pee out Alzheimer's in my project.
That's amazing. And I think, like I said, a lot of people have the potential to pursue a lot of innovation in the space and also solve a lot of important problems. So definitely take Shaan's advice and look into research papers, and like Summer said, find a lot of groups that you could potentially get involved in to find people your age that have similar passions like you. And I think with those combined together, you can have a really meaningful impact on the world. So my next question is actually for Summer. So along the journey, were there any challenges that you had, getting taken seriously, or just through the initiatives that you've launched? Are there any problems that you faced that you found were difficult to overcome? And I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about those experiences that you've had.
Yeah, so a small challenge that I've faced is the fact that I live like about 4 hours inland from the ocean, and the ocean has always been my passion, as I talked about earlier. And so I wanted to create a project, or before I created EcoEaters, I wanted to create a project that would help improve ocean health. And I didn't know how to do that because I live so far away from the ocean, and I didn't know if anything that I would do here in Tahoe would affect the ocean at all or have any impact on it. So I had to learn that most things we do on land, wherever you are, do affect the ocean. And so I know that reducing plastic at the restaurants here inland will eventually help reduce the amount of plastic that ends up in the ocean. And in terms of being taken seriously, that's definitely a challenge that I faced. When I was initially starting Eco Eaters, we emailed tons of restaurants, pretty much all of them in my area, and barely any responded. And they didn't care. They only cared about the cost of the item. They didn't care about how it was affecting the world and themselves, really. But when we decided to take a more direct approach, and so we just went into the restaurants and asked for the restaurant owner or the manager, whoever was in charge that day, and tried to get our point across and just talk to them directly. But it was a real challenge at first before anybody knew about our organization. To have us taken seriously, I mean, it looked like we were just coming in, just a few teenagers wanting to talk about a project, distracting them from work. But we kept persisting, and we kept going into the restaurants and trying to grow our project and make it more known throughout our community. And it worked, it did. So persisting has really helped for sure. And that's definitely, being taken seriously is hard, but you will be eventually, I think.
I think that's a great piece of advice. And first off, I admire the hustle and, all the work that you're doing to overcome a lot of the challenges and obstacles that were thrown in your way. I think it's so inspiring. So I want to congratulate you on everything that you've done so far and all the things that you'll continue to do as well. And Shaan, a similar question for you. I mean, like with all of the great projects that you were working on, was age ever a problem along the way, or were there any challenges that you faced when trying to scale a lot of the ideas that you had, or when it came to fabricating them in real life?
I think that's getting taken seriously is the biggest problem as being a young person, especially in the medical kind of biology field, because to do anything, you need to be in a lab. And to be in a lab, you can't just, work on cancer treatments in your basement, sadly. You have to be in these, regulated institutions, which is normal and it should be that way. But being kind of a 13-year-old or 14-year-old claiming you have a new treatment for cancer that's never been tested kind of sounds, I guess it could sound ridiculous to the people that you're trying to get let into their labs. And so I think to be relentless and really show that your stuff is probably the most important in terms of getting into these labs. And once you have kind of this track record, I think it becomes a lot easier, where now it's come to a point where if I say this absurd sounding crazy idea, people will be more likely to take me seriously because I'm lucky enough to have a track record that shows that. But to get that track record at our age, it's difficult. And that's something that I think that not only myself is trying to work on, but other companies or kind of internship givers. I think this is a problem that needs to be taken seriously all across the board, and not just medical kind of fields, but needs to be more open to kind of explaining complex ideas to youth, because I remember sending hundreds of emails just to get one maybe. Or I remember being like 15 years old and getting called into a lab, trying to get into this person's lab, and he just ripped apart my 10-page kind of lab proposal and calling in PhDs just to rip on the proposal and saying how it's ridiculous. And I think this kind of, the youth is the future. And so it's not everyone's like that, but all across the board, we need to really be connected with the youth and really try to kind of lighten and take them more seriously, because good ideas are coming out of young people.
I totally agree. I think we have a really interesting and new perspective to bring to the table, and it's amazing to see more and more people support young people with all the programs that they're launching and the immense support that's coming our way. But we definitely have a long way to go, but the future is certainly bright with all of the amazing ideas that are actually coming forth with people in our generation. So also, what can more young people do if they do have an idea and want to take it forward, particularly in the healthcare space, or if they have a startup idea and want to actually take action on it?
I think that it takes two things. It takes a relentless nature to make something work, and the motivation to do good for this world. And I think those two things is what makes great scientists. And those two things, you do not need a PhD for. You do not need to be 40 years old in a lab. You can be anyone. And I think these are the two most important things that you need to kind of make change, especially in the medical aspect, but all throughout STEM. And that's pretty much evident in everything. And if you have those two things, which I'm pretty sure everyone does at this point in time, where everyone's at home, everyone's, you know, has a lot of free time. There's no school. It's summer started early. Summer vacation started early for a lot of us. And I think these times where everyone's motivated to do good and really have nothing else to do, this is a perfect time to kind of get a hold of a problem that you've been motivated about and kind of make a change.
That's an amazing piece of advice going forward, especially taking advantage of all the extra time that we find ourselves with in the next few months. And I think the next question that I do have are for the both of you. If you kind of had to choose 3 key learnings that you had on your crazy journeys, what would they kind of be if you had to condense it into 3 things?
The first thing I would say is that we don't have to know all the answers. I thought I would have to know everything about plastic reduction and plastic pollution before I started the Eco-Eaters. And then I realized it's okay not to be an expert. As youth, we're not expected to have all the scientific information unless you do, which is great. And we're expected to have a new and fresh perspective on the issues so we can come up with new solutions. And so that's one thing. My second thing would be to ask more questions. I used to be really, really shy, hiding in the back of my class, never really talking to my teachers or any adults. And then I missed out on so many opportunities to learn from that. And so now I know that if I want to learn something, I need to ask the questions and be forward and get all the information I can about it so that I can be able to make my own opinions. And then the third thing I think would be that people want to support you and they want to support your passions and ideas. So if you have an idea, a passion, or a project, there will always be others that feel the same way and feel just as passionate about that issue or solution than you. And this might be your friends or family or just other random people that you find. And that's why I think it's important to get involved in these groups, because when I got involved in POP, I was able to connect with so many people who were doing pretty much the exact same project as me, and we compared notes and ideas on ways to get the restaurants to listen to us and get our community more involved. And so, again, I think talking to more people and communicating your idea, I think you'd be surprised at who wants to support you and help you in the world.
That's definitely very insightful, and I think a lot of people can take that away after this conversation and going forward on a lot of their ideas. And the fact that you said that a lot of people do want to support you, I couldn't agree with that more. I think it's just about putting yourself out there. What about you, Shaan?
I think 3 things that I learned was that, first off, age does not matter. Age definitely does not matter. 2, I think if you are trying to do good for this world, and kind of Rhea touched upon it, in kind of getting a return on humanity, to do really good in your research, I think that your work or whatever your change making is, it should be the reason that other people believe that there's good people in this world. And I think that kind of aligns your work on always focusing on doing good stuff for the people around you. And lastly, I think people is everything. The people around you is everything, kind of like what Summer said. You never know who you will meet and the people that will end up kind of working with you in the future. I think this is important for young people to take in consideration, where, you know, we're always growing up in high school, you're going to see a teacher and you're never going to see them again. But, you know, after high school comes around or in these events, you'll never know who will kind of help you down the road or the stuff that they're working on. And I think getting to know these people and really keeping close with these amazing people around you will truly make not only your journey more enjoyable, but will create more positive change.
That's amazing. And I know there's a few audience questions.
We have some. I was just going to say it would be great to take those. Do you want me to read a few of those? One of them is, hold on one second, I'm going to tee them up here. Do you have a guess about how the high school and college experience might change after COVID and after the racial injustices and protests? That's an awesome question. From Teresa.
So I think most high schools and colleges are making a great change right now. I know, especially here in Canada, and a lot of the schools, I believe, in the East Coast, in the States, they have made statements, and even moving forward for the fall semester, a lot of classes have been moved online to kind of help flatten the curve. And I think a lot of the schools should change for both, in racial injustice protests and for COVID. And I think they are making a change, and that's great to see.
I hope that with everything going on around the world right now, I think one of the big things that we're seeing is that people's voices are working. The action that they're taking is working. It's driving some progress. I think we have a long way to go, but I hope that more young people get inspired by this to use their platforms, use their voices, and put their ideas forward to help solve a lot of important problems like these. I think the biggest advice that I'd say is that they have the potential and capacity to actually break a lot of these barriers down and drive some meaningful progress for humanity. I think it's just about acknowledging that and using a lot of your skills, finding something that you're passionate about and taking it forward.
Yeah, I think just quickly going off of what Rhea said, people may have experienced during this time like the power of what happens when we all come together around an issue that we're all passionate about. I think we have seen how much it's really changed people's perspectives and made real change.
Well, and I want to just insert a thought with you all that I'm 57 and I was the surprise child of World War II parents who got pregnant in their late 40s. And, everybody always calls it, at least in the United States, that generation, the greatest generation. And I think there is going to be some name for you all that, I don't know if we call it the courageous generation or like all the things that are part of the strength and the indomitable spirit that you all have. It's going to be named something, but it's so fabulous and it's so inspiring to see all the ways in which people, your age and younger are leading right now. And I just think it's a great thing. And it's been so wonderful to spend time, with you all and hear your insights and hear your ideas. And our hope is that we can take this on the YouTube channel and share it liberally so that in classrooms around the country and classrooms around the world, they can see leaders like you and connect their content to their ideas, to their passions, to their challenges that they want to solve, which is all connected to why you have a purpose and why you feel passionate to improve the world. So I just want to say with that, it has just been so wonderful spending time with you all today. And Stephane, do you want to close? The only thing I will ask, if anybody listening, those of you who are joining us, want to be part of the other events happening this week with GlobalMindED or catch any of these segments on YouTube, you can also sign up for our newsletter, and we feature incredible people in our newsletter like the role models we have here today. So we look forward to continuing to work with you all, and we'll just thank each of you, Rhea and Shaan and Summer, for being part of this, and Stephane for sponsoring. And Stephane, why don't you close with some other words as well, or anyone else can share before we wrap up?
I'll just say a word of thanks again to you, Carol, for being our essential partner in supporting change, that leads to a fairer world, a more equitable world where barriers to everybody's ability to make our society better, those barriers are broken down, and we've been so pleased to work with you, and we'll continue to do that. And just listening to our amazing young change leaders, and Changemakers, I'm just inspired. I am inspired to continue the good fight, to be your partner in change, and just Godspeed to you all. And please, please count on us going forward to support your passion and to support your great ideas. And the future is really in good hands. Thank you.
And we'll see you all in Denver in 2021 with all of our vaccinations. And maybe one of you guys can come up with that vaccination sooner rather than later. So thank you all again so much. Big round of applause for all of you. So grateful. And on behalf of Celeste and Kirsten and Lisa and I, we are just so delighted to have spent this time with you and look forward to traveling all the good work that you all are doing and supporting it in any way that we can. So thank you for being global minded, and we'll see you all the next time. Bye-bye.